But something that is true for a lot of people who grow up in cults specifically is they realize it's not for them, but they don't realize it itself is the problem. So I had sort of my first moment was on 9/11. I was 14 years old. We had just come to the US for the first time, and I was watching live television for the first time. 9/11 was like the first time I ever saw live television on, because that's how isolated we were. And our cult was treating it as almost a joyful thing.
I remember you telling me that. I remember this.
God's promised judgment.
Yeah, I remember that.
We've been told America's evil for so long.
Yeah.
Like, here it is. And I just remember as a teenager seeing like the carnage and the awfulness of it, and being like, "Oh wow, are we the bad guys?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like is the children of God the bad guys?" And even then, you know, it's weird to explain, but you never. So often you don't realize you're in a cult till after you leave. And so for me, it's just like, I'm going to leave the family. I'm going to grow up and leave the family. That's what I said when I told my parents, I want to leave the family. That's what we called it. You could be in the family or you could be a systemite, which was everyone else. And I just was like, I'm going to school, I'm doing the thing, I need to get away. And so then it wasn't until I was 17 years old. I'd already been out for 2 years. And then our founder's son did a murder-suicide. And so it was on television. And I was listening. You know, it was one of those moments where they were saying, the children of God cult, the children of God cult, the children of God cult. And I was like, oh, I grew up in a cult. That's what's wrong with me.
Do you happen to know why they picked the name Children of God?
Yeah. They didn't pick it, actually. The media started calling them the Children of God, kind of derisively, like making fun of. And then they were just like, hey, I like that name. Then, much like with the Mormon Book of Mormon, so then the Children of God got too famous in these as a sex cult because they were full-on religious prostitution. So then they decided to rebrand, and they changed their name to first the Family of Love, then just the Family, and then Family International.
So you obviously have a lot of drive. Right? I could be wrong, but it's like the one like drive, like take away your drive, your ambition. How you able to keep your drive ambition through those years? Just how some eternity you have, or like how come they weren't able to like drive that out of you?
I mean, cults love drive and ambition, high speed people, but they just have to take it over and make it theirs, if that makes sense. It's almost like how like abusive men that want women who just bow to them, they want the women that are like that. They want to take an independent woman and break her. And that's kind of how cults are. I think for me, there's a couple of things. You know, I do think I have a lot of grit, whatever that is. But also, I think the neurodivergence really protected me. Like, I was always just like, no, this is silly. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do my own thing when I grow up. So it's kind of like, it's actually a little bit similar to when I went through basic training that I was going to be an officer. So I was like, yeah, I'm in this right now, but you know, I'm not going to have to do this forever. And then part of it, I think, was just I had to. You know, I was 15, dumped in the world, $0, and literally nothing to count on, I guess. So I just had to work really hard and survive and thrive.
So the military career, let's talk about it fast. You're a Army veteran. You joined enlisted. You went to OCS to be an MI officer, or military intelligence officer. And one of the highlights you talk about is the fact you became the first female in a combat unit, right, or something like that.
Yeah, well, there was 43 of us at the same time, but it was when we were deployed in 2011, and this was when.
And the first thing was it like embedded something?
Yeah, the first was one of the first women on deliberate ground combat.
Okay.
And that's language Fort Knox has told us to use. But it was basically, they were like, no, you have to put.
And is this something you volunteer to do, or you're picked to do it?
I volunteered.
Okay.
Volunteered.
And you volunteer because this might be an opportunity, like make sort of speak up, or just you want to do something different, you want to stand out.
Yes, all of it.
Okay.
But also, I was so unfamiliar with the military that I didn't even know the combat ban existed until I was in basic training, and I was flabbergasted. And it's interesting looking back because I'd say 90% probably of how I was the way I was in the military was perfectionism and self-hatred and trauma. But 10% of it was like, I recognized that misogyny and I was not going to deal with it anymore. So from day one, I was like, I will max the male PT test. I will be as good as they are because I'm not going to just accept. During my time in the military, like it was just completely acceptable to talk about how men just weren't good as men.
What the competitive drive comes from? You think like most people like I'll just pass the P test, make it, but you're like doing like what do you comes from?
So part of that, I think, is a kind of common cult baby thing, which is, I was never exposed to unconditional love. It was always about how you could work, how you be the best. As I say, like to be good in the army, you had to run fast. If it had been chemistry tests, I would have aced chemistry tests. I aced call for fire, even though I can't do math. But so that is definitely part of it. But then I also think there's, even now as I'm healing and I'm letting the perfectionism go, I still have a lot of drive. I still have a lot of creativity and passion. And I kind of think whatever I've chosen to do, I'm going to put all that.
People ask me, how you have so much drive focus? Like, how do you not have so much drive focus? Like, what do you, how do you not, like, how can you just be satisfied working 9 to 5 and, watching Netflix 7 hours a day? I just don't get it right. But we're built different. So one story you definitely have to tell. I love the story. Tell us a story about when you were somewhere in Afghanistan and you noticed a kid was there.
Yeah.
That's a fucking great story.
So, yeah, we're on a patrol. This is in Uncultured, by the way, a chapter called Combat Barbie, for those who would like to read or listen. It's on Spotify Premium. I can read it to you. So this was like 3 or 4 months into doing the missions. We get to this town. We've been there before. It's supposed to be a nothing day, right? Like a very low threat day. First thing we see is that the roads have been like caved in by rain. So there's one path that you're going to be forced to take into this village. This is the part that the male soldiers notice no problem, right? And I always say, like, the men noticed that the sand looked funny, right? Like, I would never have noticed that in a million years. But I noticed that there were no kids around. And, like, in this village specifically, our Afghan partners would literally shoot their weapons in the air to get the children to leave so that the helicopters could actually come in and land. Like, they were not scared of us. They were swarming us. But there's also this funny thing where, first of all, if you're deployed and you don't leave the base, right, you're not going to see a child for a full year. And so when I would go out, I would see kids. And the little girls could recognize that I was a woman, right? Like adults look at us and we all look the same. Little girls, they would see I was a woman and their eyes would light up. It was just like a pleasant experience for me. So I'm looking around going like, something's wrong. Like something's wrong. It feels really bad. I don't know what it is. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, there's no children anywhere. And that was when, and I was excited. When you don't even know if you should be saying something because you're like new, junior, or whatever. And it really was only because we had an officer who really, really emphasized that us being new was a value add to the team. Like this poor infantry lieutenant had been given 6 women who are not trained that he has to take into potential deliberate combat zones. And instead of being all mad about that, he was like, well, I guess, you will bring us a fresh perspective. Please speak up. He told us a bunch of times. And so I decided to say something. And that's when it was a new lieutenant. This one, unfortunately, had already passed away. And he took it very seriously immediately. He's like, stop, everyone get down. They send the EOD guys, the guys with the machines to sniff out the bombs. And, sure enough, in this, it's almost like an easy to identify spot.
Yeah.
Once we had,
how many bombs were there?
2, just one.
Just one. Okay.
It wasn't even that big.
Yeah.
It was.
But definitely done some damage, though, right? Probably killed some people.
For sure.
Do you ever think to yourself, like, how do you feel if you didn't say anything?
Yes, and I will go a little further with that, right? Because in an earlier chapter of my book, there was an ambush on the day that none of the women were on the team because we were all in cultural sensitivity training. And there was a huge ambush and we lost 10 people. And the number one thing that everybody said to me was, I'm so glad you weren't there that day. Right. And like at that time, I was just like, well, that sucked. Right. Like, what makes my life worth more than that? You know, like,
Yeah.